What if one of the most effective things you can do to reduce dangerous belly fat is so simple, so ordinary, and honestly so boring that most people completely ignore it? No expensive supplement, no miracle drink, no exhausting 2-hour workout, and definitely no hundreds of abdominal crunches every morning. Because when we're talking about visceral fat, the fat around your internal organs, the answer is not about finding one magical exercise that makes your stomach disappear. And before we go any further, let's address that 93% number in the title. You may have seen dramatic claims online suggesting that one particular habit can eliminate 93% of visceral fat. That sounds incredibly impressive, but you should be skeptical of any claim that promises a specific percentage of fat loss from one simple trick. Your body doesn't work like that. There is no single food, exercise, drink, or supplement that can guarantee the removal of exactly 93% of your visceral fat. But there is something much more important hiding behind that sensational claim. There are boring, repeatable habits that can genuinely help reduce abdominal fat over time, and they don't require you to completely change your life. And if you're over 45, this becomes especially important, because the fat around your stomach isn't necessarily the same as the fat you can see and pinch with your fingers. Think about the soft layer just underneath your skin. That's called subcutaneous fat. But deeper inside your abdomen is another type of fat called visceral fat. You can't simply reach in and pinch it. It's stored around organs such as your liver and intestines, and having too much of it is associated with problems involving blood sugar regulation, insulin resistance, cardiovascular health, and overall metabolic health. And here's something many people don't realize. You don't necessarily have to look extremely overweight to have excess abdominal fat. Maybe you've noticed something similar in yourself, or perhaps you've seen it happen to someone you know. They step onto the scale and realize their weight hasn't changed dramatically in 10 years, but their waistline has. Their clothes fit differently. Their stomach has gradually become larger. And they may assume, well, that's just what happens when you get older. But aging doesn't mean you have to simply surrender to increasing abdominal fat. Now, I'm not going to tell you that one secret food will melt it away. I'm not going to tell you to drink some strange mixture before bed. I'm not going to recommend an expensive supplement because someone on social media claims it burns visceral fat. And I'm certainly not going to tell you that doing 500 crunches will somehow target the fat surrounding your organs. That's not how fat loss works. Instead, we're going to focus on something much less exciting but much more realistic: consistency. The kind of habits you can repeat tomorrow, and the day after that, and the week after that. Because here's the good news. If you're 50, 60, or even 70, you are not automatically too old to improve your body composition or metabolic health. You don't need to become 25 again. You don't need to train like an athlete. And you don't need to follow a miserable diet that you can't maintain. You need a strategy that fits your actual life. In this video, we're going to break down the boring habits that can help you work toward reducing excess visceral fat, including what you do after meals, how you build your plate, why maintaining muscle becomes increasingly important with age, and why your sleep may matter more than you think. And stay with me until the end, because I'll put everything together into a simple daily routine that you can adapt to your own fitness level and lifestyle. Because the truth about visceral fat is much less exciting than the internet makes it sound. But that may actually be good news. Now, before we talk about what you should actually do, we need to understand why visceral fat can be so stubborn in the first place. Because if you've ever tried to lose belly fat, you already know how frustrating this can be. You may lose a few pounds. Your face looks a little slimmer. Your arms and legs look slightly different. But then you look down at your stomach and think, why is this still here? There is a reason for that. Visceral fat is not exactly the same as the soft fat sitting just underneath your skin. Subcutaneous fat is the fat you can grab with your fingers. Visceral fat is stored deeper inside your abdomen, around your internal organs. And because you can't see it directly, you can't simply judge your visceral fat by looking in the mirror. This is one reason why focusing only on your body weight can be misleading. You can lose weight without making the changes you want in your body composition. And you can sometimes maintain roughly the same weight while gradually losing muscle and accumulating more fat around your waist. And that brings us to something particularly important as we get older. Aging changes the equation. As the years go by, many people naturally become less active. Maybe you stop walking as much. Maybe your job becomes more sedentary. Maybe your knees or back make certain activities uncomfortable. Maybe you simply don't move around the house as much as you did when you were younger. At the same time, maintaining muscle becomes increasingly important. If you're not regularly challenging your muscles, you can gradually lose muscle mass and strength. And when your daily movement decreases while muscle mass declines, maintaining a healthy body composition can become more difficult. Sleep can also become more complicated with age. You may wake up during the night. You may sleep fewer hours. You may feel tired during the day and naturally move less. And all of these small changes can start adding up. Let's make this real. Imagine a 62-year-old man named David. 10 years ago, David weighed about 82 kilograms. Today, he still weighs around 82 kilograms. So he thinks, well, my weight hasn't really changed. But there's one problem. His old trousers don't fit anymore. His waist has slowly expanded. He has less muscle than he used to have, and he spends more time sitting than he did 10 years ago. So what happened? His scale didn't tell the whole story. His body composition changed. He may have lost some muscle while gaining more abdominal fat. And this is why simply stepping on the bathroom scale once a week isn't always enough to understand what's happening inside your body. Now, there's another mistake I want you to avoid. It's what I call the healthy food trap. You might think, I don't eat fast food. I eat nuts. I drink smoothies. I use olive oil. I eat healthy granola. I eat avocado. And that's all great. These can absolutely be nutritious foods. But here's the part people sometimes forget. Healthy does not automatically mean unlimited. Nuts are nutritious, but they're also calorie dense. Olive oil can be part of a healthy diet, but it still contains calories. Avocado provides valuable nutrients and healthy fats, but portion size still matters. Even a homemade smoothie can become surprisingly calorie-dense if you combine large amounts of fruit, nut butter, yogurt, milk, oats, and other ingredients. This doesn't mean you should fear these foods. Not at all. The goal is not to label foods as good or bad. The goal is to understand the overall pattern of your diet and the amount you're eating. Because when your body consistently receives more energy than it needs, losing stored body fat becomes difficult even if many of the individual foods you're eating are nutritious. And then there's another common mistake. People assume that if they want to lose belly fat, they simply need to do more and more cardio. So they walk, then they walk faster, then they add longer workouts. Then they become frustrated because they're spending more time exercising but aren't getting the results they expected. Now, don't misunderstand me. Walking and aerobic exercise are excellent. They can support cardiovascular health, improve fitness, increase daily energy expenditure, and help with blood sugar management. But for older adults, cardio shouldn't be the entire strategy. Your muscles need attention too. Simple resistance exercises such as chair sit-to-stands, wall push-ups, resistance band exercises, or appropriately chosen weights can help you maintain strength and muscle as you age. And that's important because the goal isn't simply to make the number on your scale smaller. The goal is to improve your body composition and health while protecting your strength and independence. So here's the gentle warning I want you to remember. The biggest concern isn't simply that your stomach gets bigger or that your clothes become tighter. The bigger concern is what excess visceral fat can mean for your long-term metabolic health. But don't let that scare you into trying another extreme diet. Let it motivate you to make smarter, sustainable changes. Because now that you understand why visceral fat can accumulate and why it's so stubborn, we can finally talk about what actually helps. And surprisingly, the first step is one of the simplest things you can do: walking after you eat. Now we get to the part that matters most. Because understanding visceral fat is useful, but understanding it doesn't change your waistline. What you do consistently does. And if there's one principle I want you to remember from this entire video, it's this: consistency beats extremes. You don't need a perfect Monday, followed by a perfect Tuesday, followed by a perfect month. You need simple habits that are realistic enough to repeat. And let's start with one of the easiest: Step 1. Walk after your meals. After you've finished a meal, especially lunch or dinner, don't automatically sit down for the next 2 or 3 hours. Instead, if you're physically able, try taking a gentle walk. It doesn't need to be fast. It doesn't need to make you sweat. And it doesn't need to feel like a workout. Even 10 to 15 minutes of easy walking can be a practical way to add movement to your day. And activity after meals can help your body manage the rise in blood sugar that normally happens after eating. Think about your typical evening. You finish dinner, you clear the plates, then you sit on the sofa, turn on the television, and before you know it, an hour has passed. Now imagine changing just one part of that routine. You finish dinner, put on your comfortable shoes, and walk around the block for 10 minutes. That's it. You're not training for a marathon. You're simply giving your body a reason to move after eating. And here's why I love this strategy for older adults. You don't have to find an extra hour in your schedule. You're attaching movement to something you already do every day. You eat every day. So instead of asking yourself, when am I going to find time to exercise? You can ask, what can I do for the next 10 minutes after I eat? Those 10 minutes can become 15. 15 can become a regular habit. And one small habit repeated hundreds of times can matter far more than one intense workout you do once every few weeks. Of course, if you have significant mobility problems, balance concerns, chest pain, or another medical limitation, don't force yourself into a walking routine without getting appropriate medical guidance. The goal is movement. You can perform safely. Step 2. Build your meals around protein and fiber. Now let's talk about food. And I'm going to make this very simple. Instead of searching for a magical food that burns visceral fat, start building your meals around protein and fiber-rich foods. Why protein? Because as we get older, preserving muscle becomes increasingly important. Protein provides amino acids your body uses to maintain and repair muscle tissue. That doesn't mean you need enormous amounts of protein, or that protein automatically burns belly fat. It means that when you're trying to improve your body composition, protecting muscle should be part of the strategy. You can get protein from foods such as eggs, fish, Greek yogurt, beans, lentils, chicken, and other protein-rich foods that fit your dietary preferences. Then add plenty of fiber-rich foods, vegetables, beans and lentils, whole grains, fruit, and other minimally processed plant foods. Fiber can help you feel fuller and can support overall digestive and metabolic health. So rather than asking, what's the one food that melts belly fat? Ask a better question. How can I build a meal that keeps me satisfied and makes it easier to control my overall intake? That's a much more useful question. Step 3. Remove the calories you barely notice. Here's where things get interesting. You don't necessarily have to completely redesign your diet. Sometimes the easier strategy is to look for the calories that don't feel very satisfying. Start with sugary drinks, sodas, sweetened coffees, certain fruit drinks, and other beverages that can deliver a surprising amount of sugar without making you feel particularly full. Then look at frequent desserts and highly processed snacks. A cookie here, a handful of chips there, a sweet drink in the afternoon, a second serving at dinner. None of these foods automatically makes you unhealthy. The problem is what happens when small extras become an everyday pattern. So instead of saying, I can never eat dessert again, try thinking, do I really need this every single day? That small change in thinking can be much easier to maintain. And the same principle applies to portions. Healthy food can still contribute to weight gain when the portions consistently exceed what your body needs. You don't have to starve yourself. You need an eating pattern that you can realistically maintain. And if you drink alcohol, remember that alcoholic beverages can also contribute calories, and excessive alcohol intake can work against your health goals. Step 4. Don't forget your muscles. Now here's the part that many belly fat videos completely ignore. Strength training. If you're over 45 or 50, preserving muscle isn't just about looking better in a shirt. It's about staying strong enough to live your life. Think about getting out of a chair, carrying groceries, climbing stairs, getting up from the floor, opening a heavy door. Those everyday movements depend on strength. And you don't need to become a bodybuilder. You can start with very simple movements. Chair sit to stands, wall push-ups, resistance band exercises, light dumbbells, if they're appropriate for you. Even a few basic exercises performed consistently can be a much better long-term strategy than constantly chasing exhausting workouts. The goal is progressive strength, not punishment. If you're completely new to resistance training, start at a level you can control safely and gradually increase the challenge. And remember, muscle preservation becomes especially valuable when you're losing body fat because you don't want your goal to simply be a smaller number on the scale. You want to become healthier, stronger, and more capable. Step 5. Protect your sleep. And finally, don't overlook something that happens while you're doing absolutely nothing. Sleep. Poor or insufficient sleep can make healthy eating and appetite control more difficult for many people. When you're exhausted, that afternoon cookie can become harder to resist. You may crave highly palatable foods. You may have less motivation to exercise. And you may simply move less throughout the day. So don't think of sleep as separate from your health goals. Try keeping a relatively consistent sleep and wake schedule. Create a relaxing bedtime routine. Keep your bedroom comfortable and dark. And if you're regularly struggling with sleep, especially if you snore heavily, wake up gasping, or feel unusually tired during the day, talk with a healthcare professional. Don't assume that poor sleep is simply something you have to accept because you're getting older. The big reveal. So now let's return to the title. What is the boring secret? It's not a special tea. It's not a magic supplement. It's not 500 crunches. And it's not one exercise that somehow tells your body, burn the fat around my organs, but leave everything else alone. The boring secret is this. Do simple things consistently for months, instead of searching for a dramatic solution every week. Walk after meals. Eat satisfying meals built around protein and fiber. Reduce unnecessary calories. Train your muscles. Protect your sleep. Then repeat. Again, and again, and again. And I want to be very clear about something. There is no credible routine that can guarantee it will destroy exactly 93% of your visceral fat. If someone promises you that, be skeptical. Real human biology is more complicated than a headline. But here's the part that should give you hope. You don't need a 93% promise to make progress. You need a strategy you can actually follow. Because the boring approach may not give you an overnight transformation. It may not produce an impressive before and after picture in 7 days, but it is much closer to what sustainable health actually looks like. And if you can make these habits part of your normal life, you're no longer depending on motivation. You're building a routine. Practical tips make it easy to follow. Now, let's make this even easier. Because knowing what to do is one thing. Actually doing it when you're tired, busy, or simply not in the mood is something completely different. So instead of giving you another complicated health plan, here are 7 simple ways to make these habits easier to follow. Tip 1. Use the 10-minute rule. If you're not motivated to exercise, don't tell yourself you need to complete a long workout. Tell yourself, I'll just walk for 10 minutes. That's it. 10 minutes. Because the hardest part is often not the walking. It's getting started. Once you've put your shoes on and taken the first few steps, continuing often feels much easier. And if you finish 10 minutes and genuinely feel tired, you've still accomplished something. If you feel good, keep going a little longer. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is to make movement so manageable that you stop looking for excuses to avoid it. Tip 2. Use a simple plate method. You don't need to weigh every piece of food for the rest of your life. Instead, start with a simple visual approach. Build most of your meal around vegetables or other fiber-rich foods. Add a good source of protein, such as fish, eggs, yogurt, chicken, beans, or lentils. Then include a sensible portion of carbohydrates, such as potatoes, rice, oats, or whole grains. And don't be afraid of healthy fats. Foods such as nuts, seeds, avocado, and olive oil can fit into a healthy diet. The key is portion awareness. Think about the meal as a whole, instead of obsessing over whether one ingredient is good or bad. Tip 3. Measure your waist, not just your weight. Here's something many people overlook. Don't let the bathroom scale become your only measurement. Your body weight can tell you something useful, but your waist circumference can provide additional information about abdominal fat. If you choose to measure your waist, try to do it under similar conditions each time. For example, measure around the same time of day and use the same general location on your abdomen. Then look at the trend over time. Don't measure yourself every few hours and panic because the number changed. And don't expect your waist to shrink dramatically in a few days. Real changes take time. What matters is the direction you're moving over weeks and months. Tip 4. Stop chasing daily weight changes. This is especially important if you are trying to lose body fat. Your weight can change from one morning to the next even when you haven't gained or lost meaningful amounts of body fat. Why? Water, salt, carbohydrates, food still being digested, and changes in bowel movements can all affect the number on the scale. So if the scale is 1 kilogram higher tomorrow, don't immediately assume you've gained a kilogram of fat. Look at the long-term trend. Think in weeks rather than individual days. Your goal is not to win today's weigh-in. Your goal is to gradually improve your health and body composition over time. Tip 5. Start smaller than you think. If you've been inactive for months or years, don't suddenly decide that you're going to exercise like a professional athlete. That's a great way to become extremely motivated for 3 days and extremely sore on day 4. Start smaller. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk. Maybe it's 5 controlled chair sit-to-stands. Maybe it's a few wall push-ups. Maybe it's a short resistance band session. Then, as your body adapts, gradually increase the duration, repetitions, or resistance. Remember, your starting point doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be realistic. Tip 6. Make your environment work for you. Here's a surprisingly powerful trick. Don't rely entirely on willpower. Change your environment. If you want to eat more fruit, keep fruit where you can see it. If you want to eat more vegetables, prepare some ahead of time. If you tend to snack mindlessly while watching television, don't keep large packages of highly tempting snacks sitting right beside your chair. And when possible, prepare simple meals before you're extremely hungry. Because when you're exhausted and starving at 8 o'clock at night, making a healthy decision becomes much harder. Make the healthy choice the easy choice. You don't need perfect discipline when your environment is helping you. Tip 7. Know when to get professional guidance. And finally, please don't assume that every health strategy is appropriate for everyone. If you have significant medical conditions, serious mobility limitations, unexplained weight changes, or you're taking medications that affect blood sugar, appetite, or weight, it's worth discussing your exercise and nutrition plans with a qualified healthcare professional. The same applies if exercise causes unusual chest pain, severe shortness of breath, dizziness, or other concerning symptoms. The goal isn't simply to lose belly fat. The goal is to become healthier without putting yourself at unnecessary risk. So don't rush. Don't punish yourself. And don't compare your progress to someone half your age on social media. Start where you are. Take the next small step and let consistency do the heavy lifting. So, let's bring everything together. If you've been waiting for one secret food, one special exercise, or one miracle supplement that will somehow target the fat around your organs and make it disappear overnight, I don't want you wasting your time, because that solution doesn't exist. Visceral fat is important because having too much of it is associated with poorer metabolic and cardiovascular health. But the answer isn't extreme. It's actually surprisingly simple. Move your body regularly. Walk, especially after meals when practical. Do some form of resistance training to help maintain muscle and strength. Build your meals around nutritious sources of protein and fiber. Pay attention to portions and your overall calorie intake. Protect your sleep. And most importantly, do these things consistently. Not for 3 days. Not for 1 week. Not until the scale doesn't move fast enough and you give up. Think in months, not days. And if you're 50, 60, or 70, and you've noticed that your waistline has gradually changed, I want you to hear this clearly. You have not missed your opportunity. You don't need to go back to the body you had at 25. You don't need to punish yourself for what happened over the last 10 or 20 years. You simply need to decide what you're going to do from this point forward. Maybe tomorrow starts with a 10-minute walk after breakfast or dinner. Maybe you add protein to your next meal. Maybe you replace a sugary drink with water. Maybe you do a few controlled chair sit-to-stands. Those actions may feel almost too simple, but that's the point. I would rather give you a boring strategy you can actually follow than a dramatic promise that sounds impressive for 30 seconds and leaves you frustrated a week later. And that's what I want this channel to be about. No miracle claims. No impossible promise. Just practical, evidence-informed health information that you can understand and actually use. So now, I want to hear from you. What's one boring health habit you could realistically do every single day? Is it a 10-minute walk? Drinking fewer sugary beverages? Eating more vegetables? Getting to bed earlier? Or doing a few simple strength exercises? Tell me in the comments. And if this video helped you understand visceral fat a little differently, consider subscribing for more practical, healthy aging videos. And share this with someone you care about, a spouse, parent, sibling, or friend who might be trying to improve their health too. Because sometimes the advice that sounds the least exciting is the advice we can actually live with. The boring habits are not exciting, but done consistently, they can change far more than your waistline. They can change the direction of your health.